Hello and welcome to my top 10 Sega Megadrive games in my video game collection. Disclaimer, only games I actually have in my collection will be included in the list. In the future I may make a top 10 Megadrive games ever released video, but I have tried to do something slightly different for this video, so I hope you enjoy. The games featured in this list have been chosen for factors including gameplay, nostalgia and coolness. Grab a beverage, sit back and relax. This is the top 10 Sega Megadrive games in my collection. We start off the top 10 list with NHL 97. Released in 1996, NHL 97 was the 6th game in EA's long-running series of games, featuring gameplay that has aged better than most of EA's other sport franchises released on the system. I probably played a lot more of FIFA 96 when I was younger, but in my opinion the 16-bit generation was the golden era of hockey games, and is the reason this game makes it onto the list, featuring a plethora of licensed teams, game modes, editors and battery backup on the cartridge. It is a pretty extensive representation of the sport with solid gameplay, graphics and sound. At number 9 we have Super Smash TV. Super Smash TV is a port of the Midway arcade game released 2 years prior. The game is essentially an ultra-violent twin-stick shooter with gameplay inspired by the likes of Robotron. Concept-wise, the story takes heavy inspiration from the movie Running Man and sees contestants battle hordes of enemies for a chance to visit the elusive Pleasure Dome. Smash TV is ultra challenging even on the easiest setting, and due to only being compatible with 3-button Megadrive controllers, the controls aren't great. You can however plug a second controller into port 2 and control fire and movement independently using 2 D-pads. There was a Super Nintendo port of the game released which had superior controls due to the gamepad having more buttons, however that version was also heavily censored with a lot of the violence toned down or removed entirely. Strider features at number 8 on the list. Strider is a side-scrolling platformer where you play as Hiryu, who is a member of Striders, a secret group of ninjas. Strider has a very distinct, almost 80s sci-fi feel to it, with weird synthy music and sound effects, and for some reason I can't help but think of the Flash Gordon movie when I play the game. Probably not surprising considering Strider on the Mega Drive is a port of the late 80s Capcom arcade game by the same name, Strider. The game has a great variety of levels, from 2048 Soviet Russia and Siberia to the Amazon, and has a weird but great selection of enemies to dispose of. Strider did spawn a sequel on the Mega Drive and also a current gen reboot, but this is definitely a case of original being the best option. My third but definitely not last arcade port on the list is MBA Jam. MBA Jam was released in 1993 in arcades and made its way onto the home consoles later that year. MBA Jam is a super simple 2-on-2 arcade style basketball game and is a super fun multiplayer game. The game feels like it is slightly lacking in content with very limited modes and options, but the addictive gameplay more than makes up for this. There was a sequel, MBA Jam Tournament Edition, which added a tournament mode and a few other features, but I have yet to pick that one up yet, maybe sometime in the future. The great graphics and sound also make a great case for the game to feature at number 7 on this list. On the list at number 6 is Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. This Mega Drive game is a side-scrolling platformer that is pretty average in the gameplay department. The reason the game makes it onto the list is because of how epic the music is in the game, featuring chiptune instrumentals of some of the late singer's hits. The game is based on the 1988 Moonwalker movie, which obviously starred Michael Jackson. The game isn't particularly rare, but it is starting to command a premium, so I'm pretty lucky to have it in the collection. There was a Moonwalker arcade game, also developed by SEGA, which has a completely different gameplay style and mechanics, but is super cool and also worth checking out if you have the chance. You're going to want to have your 6-button controller at the ready for number 5 on the list. Yeah, Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Super Nintendo is probably a better Street Fighter game than Special Champion Edition on Sega's Mega Drive. However, at the end of the day, it is still Street Fighter 2 and is therefore an awesome game. The game comes on a 24 megabit cartridge, which is pretty hefty storage for a Mega Drive game. The graphics are decent, although the colour palette can seem quite off compared to the arcade original, and the music is also much harsher playing through the Mega Drive's Yamaha sound chip, but the gameplay is pure Street Fighter 2 awesome. Super Street Fighter 2 was also available on the Mega Drive, and I do have it in my collection. However, I'm not a fan of the changed opening cinematic and the remixed stage music arrangements. I also don't care much for the added new characters in that game. So here we are at number 4. Okay, so hear me out on this one. Yes, you might say Street Fighter 2 is better than Mortal Kombat, and I would agree if you were comparing the Super Nintendo versions of those games. However, the Mega Drive was a cool kids console, and Mortal Kombat gets way more cool points than Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition does, especially if you enter the cheat code to enable blood. Graphics wise, things aren't that great, but the Mega Drive's renditions of the arcade original's music are great in my opinion and take me back to the days of Mortal Kombat play fighting on the school playground. Mortal Kombat was an arcade phenomenon at the time of release, and the series is still putting out great fighting games to this day. So you definitely want this game in your collection. It is a classic on the Mega Drive.
Get over here! Get over here!
Number 3. I mean, obviously this one was on the list. Robocop vs Terminator was released in 1993 and is a game loosely based on a 4-part comic series that released in 1992 of the same name. The game is a side-scrolling platform shooter where you play as Robocop in an attempt to end Skynet once and for all. The graphics in this game are excellent and capture the atmosphere of both movie franchises excellently. The music by Tommy Tallarico is also great and really sets the mood. There aren't many negatives about this game, however if you die during a boss fight, you lose any weapons you have picked up and the bog standard pistol you revert back to is woefully underpowered and requires way too many shots to kill a boss. Obviously the game has Robocop and also Terminators, hence why it is third on the list for the Mega Drive. There is a Super Nintendo game that is pretty much an entirely different game, and that one kind of sucks, so you do well to avoid it. Shock horror, number 2 is not Sonic 2. Up, down, left, right, A star is the level select cheat for Sonic, and I haven't been able to get it out of my head in over 20 years. Even though you can't spin dash, the original Sonic the Hedgehog in my opinion has the best music of the series, and it also gets massive bonus points for not having Tails in the game. I love the bold, chunky art design of the game and much prefer the original Sonic to any of the Mario games. Unfortunately, most Sonic games are really bad these days and they don't even come with a cool poster in the box, but at least we got Sonic Mania. Sonic carries a fair challenge but isn't impossible, and if you really want bragging rights you can collect all of the Chaos Emeralds before you destroy Dr. Robotnik's contraption at the very end. Here's to hoping for Sonic Mania 2. Yes, that was a troll head. Did you really think we could get to number 1 without Streets of Rage? Never mind without Streets of Rage, Revenge of Shinobi and Golden Axe. This might confuse people outside of Europe, but essentially Mega Games 2 is a compilation cartridge of these 3 must-have games that was only released in Europe. The original Streets of Rage is the best in the series in my opinion. I do like Streets of Rage 2, however I just find the game to be way too easy. The original game in the series offers a lot more challenge and is also great if you play cooperatively with a second player. I must also add that Adam was my favourite character in Streets of Rage, and they made up some ludicrous storyline and removed him from the sequels. An absolute travesty. The music from Yuzo Koshiro is possibly the best on the system in my opinion, and the controls are so tight and responsive, really satisfying. Revenge of Shinobi is another game with a belting Yuzo Koshiro soundtrack that really sets the tone. I do recommend that you use the unlimited shuriken cheat with this one and rain down sharp hell on your foes. Like Streets of Rage, the Revenge of Shinobi provides a fair challenge, although the final level is a maze that I have never actually managed to navigate successfully. There are also quite a few movie references in this game, such as Terminator and Rambo. Depending on which cartridge variation you play, Spider-Man and Batman might also make an appearance. Golden Axe is the only arcade port on the Mega Games 2 cartridge. Golden Axe is actually the weakest of the 3 games on the Mega Games 2 cartridge, and that only speaks volumes as to how great the other 2 titles are. Yet again, another Mega Drive game with some great catchy tunes, although no Yuzo this time round. Golden Axe has been ported to so many systems, but the Mega Drive version is definitely the one to get, with superior graphics. There were 2 sequels to Golden Axe on the Mega Drive, both inferior to the original, and a few terrible spin-offs of the main series on other systems. So there you have it, the top 10 games in my Mega Drive collection, as per my opinion. I tried to do something a little bit different compared to the usual top 10 game lists, and I hope you enjoyed it. Chances are that you won't agree with my selections, but if I don't own a particular game, then it couldn't be on the list. Rules is rules. Thanks for watching, and let me know your favourite Mega Drive games in the comments.